This is another episode of Dangerous Ideas. My name is Shawn Kanungo. I'm an innovation strategist. What we do is we break down concepts and frameworks that will change your life. Oh, wow. Hey everyone, this is another episode of Dangerous Ideas. My name is Shawn Kanungo. I'm super excited to be here today because of a number of reasons. And I think that this podcast will be entitled The New Beginning. A new beginning for many categories. I think we probably have to start with the fact that yesterday was the end of an era, end of the Joe Biden era. Well, he's still going to be there for the next number of months. And the new president of the United States, Donald Trump. The 47th president of the United States is Donald Trump. It's interesting. Yesterday, I was in Atlanta. This morning, I was actually in Atlanta, and I woke up. I knew that he was going to win last night. I looked on Poly Market. It was rising 90%, 95%, 97%, and I knew that he was going to win. But last night, I went to bed. I was doom scrolling like everybody else was last night, and then got to bed at 11:30. And then, for some reason, I woke up at like 3:30 and I'm like, I just need to check to see what happened. Maybe something happened. Maybe Kamala came back. But sure enough, he announced that he won, and I couldn't get back to sleep. I literally was up since 3:30 in the morning, Eastern time. Again, doom scrolling for a couple hours in the morning to see what happens. I'd love the post-game analysis. I don't even live in America, and I love the post-game analysis. And what's interesting is that this is a new beginning. It's a new beginning for the United States, but it might also be a new beginning for everyone else around the world. Having Donald Trump back in as president is going to be interesting. And I know there's going to be a lot of post-game analysis around what happened in the elections. People are already talking about how why did Donald Trump win? Why did Kamala win? You know, how there were more young people, more African Americans, more women, more Hispanics voting for Trump, and at the same time, you know, people talking about all of Kamala's downfalls. But I don't want to get into all that, okay? 'Cause I don't want to get into all that. What I do want to get into is one of the beefs that I have with Canadians. And my beef with Canadians is, for some reason, we like to dunk on our American friends. For some reason, Canadians have this superiority complex when it comes to Americans. And I think we should relax. The reality is that we are so desperately wanting to be Americans that we hate on them. We love their culture. We love their sports. We love their food. We can't stop talking about them and their politics. And the thing that I hate the most is that people say that Americans are dumb. That Canadians say that Americans are dumb. And it is so far from the truth. Obviously, I spend a lot of time in America and have incredible conversations with people across the nation, people that live on the coast, people live in the mainland. And what I love about America is that they're different. They're actually different than every other nation on the planet. They are more entrepreneurial. They do have energy. They do have enthusiasm. And so their politics might reflect in different ways. And I think instead of us railing on the fact that Americans are idiots, how could they do something like this, we have to understand the context in which they live under, and the fact that they do have more. There's more dynamism. There's more entrepreneurship, and you know, part of the reason why they voted for Donald Trump is because Donald Trump represents that aspirational nature of what the United States is all about. Now, I am not a fan of Donald Trump. I actually have not heard a single thing that Donald Trump has said that is actually valuable. I can't tell you something that he said that has changed my life or that any plan of his. I have no idea. but he's a symbol of something. He's a symbol of what America wants. He represents change. He represents that innovation. And I think the most, and I want to look in the positive light, because I think a lot of Canadians that are watching this or that are listening to this, they may be dunking on Americans and how they've made this particular decision. But I'm biased. I also look at the world through a particular lens, and the lens that I look through is the lens of innovation, and a lens of helping the economy, and the lens of small business and medium businesses growing. And I believe that one of the greatest catalysts for a society is by helping the economy. It's actually creating innovations. That's how you create a better society. It's through the idea of innovations. And I have no idea what Trump's policies are. I don't think he even clarified what his policies are. But what I do know is that he does have some people around them that kind of know a little bit about innovation when it comes to guys like Elon Musk or Peter Thiel or David Sachs. These are individuals, JD Vance. These are people that do understand innovation. Now, I'm an Obama guy. I want you to know this. If you're watching this, you're listening to this, I'm an Obama guy, okay? That's my guy. I love Obama. I'm an Obama guy, okay? But when it comes to the economy, I think that Trump has some of the right people that understand what it means to be an innovator. And innovation requires you working on really hard problems, trying to move things forward. And this gets to my next point around Elon. Now, a lot of people are talking about how Elon Musk has been a big part of Trump's campaign. Obviously, Elon bought X, and he was a huge catalyst for Trump's campaign. Not only did he give a tremendous amount of money, but also on his platform that he bought, he was very vocal on this particular campaign. Now, I know I have a lot of friends and I have a lot of people that I love and respect, and they hate Elon. They hate what Elon stands for. They hate some of his comments that are misogynistic, perhaps even racist, perhaps even rubbing people the wrong way. And I actually agree with all of that. He's not somebody that we should model in terms of our behavior, but he is somebody that is moving the world forward. Electric vehicles, clean energy, space exploration, all the things that he's doing with satellite communication, with Starlink, neurotechnology, tunneling and infrastructure. What he's done with he was one of the founders of OpenAI. This whole revolution around generative AI would not have been here unless we had Elon. And if you, I know it's like Elon has become like this religious cult figure, and I'm not like an Elon fanboy. I don't own a Tesla. I don't own a Cybertruck. I don't even have an X Premium account. But Elon is trying to move the world forward. And this goes back to one of my previous pods that, insane people get insane results. And you may not like his politics, and you may not like the individual, but he is moving the world forward. And he does say some crazy things. And guess what? Throughout history, some of the best innovators, some of the best pioneers throughout history were not great people, probably. Go back to Steve Jobs. Was Steve Jobs a great person? No. Steve Jobs was an asshole. Was Bill Gates a great person? No. Bill Gates was also very intimidating, and he was also an asshole. Thomas Jefferson, he was like a slave owner. Mahatma Gandhi said terrible things about black Africans, and also probably did some things with kids that people don't want to talk about. Listen, if Alexander the Great, Napoleon, Julius Caesar, Marcus Aurelius, if they had Twitter, I wonder what they would say. By the way, some of these people killed hundreds of thousands of people, like Alexander the Great or Napoleon. I mean, it's crazy. The people that we idolize, that we go back to, that we put in the history books, not everyone was a great person. But many of these people move the world forward. And sometimes we have to separate the individual from all the good. And not everyone's gonna be 100% good. I try to bring up this example. Like, I love my mother. My mother, I talk to my mother every single day. I've never missed. I FaceTime her every single day. I try to see her every single week. I love my mother. Do I agree with my mother? I mean, just like every single auntie on the planet that I know and every single uncle that I know, every single one of them, they're racist. They have racist views. They have racist views against certain, individuals. Actually, go to any South Asian, gathering with old aunties and uncles, and they are the most racist people on the planet. Yet I still love them, even though they're racists. I still love them. I still support them. I can separate that. I understand the context is where they came from. And for some reason, we brush people with this one color of paint, and we say, Elon's a bad person because he said all these different things. We need to, I think the reason why I want to call this the new beginning is that this might be the end of the woke movement. And I think part of the challenge of the woke movement was this idea that we painted people with one brush. And I wish that we can see a little bit more context, and we can understand the context as to, why people do the things that they do. And so I'm not sure what's going to happen with this new term. I don't live in that country. Although I now pay U.S. taxes, which I just found out unceremoniously this month that I now have to pay U.S. taxes because I spend so much time in the U.S. So I am a U.S. tax-paying non-citizen. I'm not sure what's going to happen. And I know a lot of my friends and a lot of people I know, they woke up this morning and they were unhappy and they were disgusted. But just like what happened in 2016, maybe there's some good that comes out of it. Who knows? And I think we need to be able to understand each other a little bit more. And this brings me to my next point. This podcast is about a new beginning. And last week, ChatGPT, the company that we've been talking about for the last couple of years on this pod, came out with their new search function, ChatGPT Search. Now, they've been teasing this for the last number of months, and it finally came out. And this might be the end of search. Now that sounds like a big statement because Google has been entrenched in our lives for decades. It's literally a verb. So to displace Google is a big ask. I mean, most people are not even using ChatGPT. And actually, most users can't access ChatGPT search because it's right now just for pro users. But just playing around with it, I can absolutely see a world where Google gets disrupted. Because what ChatGPT is doing with their search, number one, obviously today, it's not inundated with ads. And if you go to Google search today, the first 5 links will be ads. And it's completely useless. The first page is almost completely useless. And ChatGPT does something really elegant. On the right side of your screen, you actually see the citations of where they're pulling all the information from. So if you say, hey, I'm looking for the latest news on the election, they will pull all the citations on the right-hand side. And I actually found that quite elegant. It's very similar to what Perplexity does in their AI search. Now, when ChatGPT came out, they weren't a big disruptor to search because I believe that they created a new category, which was answer. You see, what Google did with search, it gives you all these possibilities. It's more about discovery. That's the category. And then what ChatGPT was doing, it was giving you a new category, which was answer. And so all these platforms that were coming out, they were trying to compete against that category on answer. But what now ChatGPT has done, it is now trying to disrupt search. And I believe that it is going to have a massive impact on Google. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think the most compelling piece is what's going to be happening to marketers. There's so many organizations, there's so many agencies that have developed their entire businesses on this concept of search engine optimization, where they have engineered all their pages to show up at the front of Google. And many local companies, that has, in the digital world, that was incredible real estate. But what ChatGPT has rolled out, it's a fundamentally new piece of real estate. And I think people are trying to figure out, how do I show up in that real estate? It's like the new, it's the new boardwalk. So how do you show up on that real estate? And I think people are going to try to figure it out. And my belief is that we are moving from search engine optimization to search intelligence optimization. And how you game the system, because this is what marketers have done throughout history, is that anytime there's a new platform, they always figure out how to game it. Whether it's SEO, it's social media, it's the telephone books. Back in the day, the smart companies, what they would do to game the telephone books is that they would go to they would try to be at the top of the list. So they would say AAA plumbing, AAA contracting, and that was their way of getting to the top of the list. It's going to be really interesting to see how companies get into this search intelligence optimization. And I have no idea what the world's going to look like. Even I don't think OpenAI has any idea around what's going to show up at the top of their list too. Just listening to some interviews of Sam Altman, every single time I come away from an interview listening to Sam Altman, he was recently at their developer conference. They were interviewed by the guys at Harry Stebbings from 20VC, and Sam Altman's like, yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea about what the future is going to look like. So it's going to be a new beginning for search, and I'm really excited to see what happens around it. All right. There's also a new beginning when it comes to trust because of this. And, I've been talking about this a lot, which is this idea that AI marks the end of trust. Part of the reason why AI marks the end of trust is because the internet will be inundated with AI content. In fact, some experts believe that more than 90% of the internet will be inundated by AI content. And so in a world that is just AI driven, what can you trust at the end of the day? If we're looking at a piece of content, whether it's on social media or off a website, we have to ask ourselves, is this AI driven? Is this AI powered? I'll give you an example. Today, I was looking on LinkedIn and I was tagged in this post, and I could clearly tell that this LinkedIn post was an AI driven post. I don't know. I could just tell the hashtags, the way that it was formatted. This was clearly put into ChatGPT and then put onto LinkedIn. And guess what? I kind of skimmed it. I didn't read it. And my belief is that we are already inundated with information. We have more information than ever before. We have more citizen journalists. We have more cameras. We have more ways of getting out our information. People are literally walking around with cameras in 4K. Add AI to this, we are getting inundated with information. And my belief is that when we are inundated with information, everyone goes blind. Why? Because when you're hit with all this information, you're not able to go deep. You're not able to understand the context, the nuance. You're not able to go deeper. And that's why you see really smart people that I know really well, that are scientists, that are lawyers, that are doctors, like people that are, well-researched. They're very intelligent people. They're also only looking at the headlines. They're also only looking at the podcast clips. They're only looking at what they see on the top headlines on social media. And so that's a problem. It's a problem because if you can't go deep, you won't have that, like I said before, you don't have that context. You don't have the nuance at the end of the day. And so this is going to be a new beginning. And I think there's going to be new forms of trust that will be created. I think in an AI world, actually meeting people in person is going to become disproportionately more valuable. I think you're going to see way more in-person events, way more communities, way more human, tangible interactions happening because people will trust the internet a lot less, right? What happens when everyone can send an email, hundreds of emails, thousands of emails, with one click of a button using AI? What happens? Well, what happens is that people will trust email less. What happens when AI gets integrated with all our social media? Well, there's just going to be more social media content that's boring, that's mediocre, and you don't want to be on it. So it's interesting, the more access that we have to something like AI, and it makes everything abundant, the value of that thing goes down. So it's going to be interesting to see. So on that topic of AI, I believe that there's going to be a new beginning when it comes to software companies. I believe that actually this might be the end of software as a service. You know, it's interesting, like, why does software exist? You know, back in the day, in the early 1900s, 1800s, 1700s, they never had software as a service. They never had a CRM. They never had a back end, IT service management piece of software. We didn't have any of that. We just dealt with it through paper, through pen, through other means, through ink. Why do we have all these things? I have never met a single human on the planet that enjoys software. Like, I've never seen a single person that actually enjoys a CRM software. And my belief, what's happening with AI, is that at the base layer, there's just going to be a database. And the way to access that database is actually going to be through voice. Like, I'll give you an example. If I was talking to a client, all I want to do is have a conversation with that client and record that client information, and it will automatically input that information into some sort of system saying, this is the conversation that we had, this is their kids' names, this is where they want to go, this is when we need to follow up. I don't want to enter any of that information into any piece of software or on a piece of paper or nothing. I just want AI to do that seamlessly. And so the more and more sophisticated that AI gets, especially when it comes to voice, I believe that voice is going to be the next interface. And I believe this for the longest time. In fact, back in 2018, I started a startup, and it was known as Silver. And the thesis around that was the idea that voice was going to become the next interface. The idea that we would just talk to Siri and Google and Alexa, and we wouldn't have to update a CRM. We wouldn't have to look at a map and see when the bus is coming next. The voice would help us do that. And at the time, I bet my horse on on these platforms like Google and Amazon, and it was the wrong horse to bet on, because their platforms didn't even develop to where OpenAI is today with their voice capabilities. But the thesis still remains the same, that voice is going to become the next interface. And so this is going to be the end of software and the beginning of a new layer that is enabled through voice and through artificial intelligence. You're going to have a reckoning when it comes to software as a service. All these companies have come up because they're trying to solve a particular problem, right? You're trying to integrate. Like, we've created all these softwares, we've created all these APIs to integrate with each other. Like, AI will just seamlessly do all of that. And so I think it's going to be a really interesting world when it comes to software, and I actually think that's going to be a new beginning. This leads to my next point, which I believe that there's going to be a new beginning when it comes to government and institutions. Now, it's interesting that we're talking about this on November 6th, the day after the U.S. election. And what's interesting is that Elon, during the Trump election campaign, he was banning about that he was going to become the director of governmental efficiency, DOGE. And it's the idea that, he was able to cut X's staff by almost 90%. And guess what? Everybody thought it was going to be the downfall of X, but of course they're still running fine, and they're still doing fine, and they've been able to, become way more operationally efficient. And my belief is that, and part of the reason why I think Elon is actually a good partner for Trump is that he's not wrong. The reason why bureaucracies exist, the reason why hierarchies exist, it's for a good reason. It's for accountability. It's for getting the work done. I remember just being, working for public sector organizations. This is what would typically happen. I love bureaucracy. I would show off the final report that I need to give, and inevitably the client would bring like 10, 12, 25 people to this particular meeting. And I'd be like, that's great, more accountability, it's great. And then in my meeting, what we would do, I swear to God, I would put up the slide, and then there would be 25 people in that room, and we would finesse the words on the slide. Like, oh, this word should be recommendations, or this word should be options, or potential, options for the future. We would literally just finesse words. We would spend hours finessing words. And then inevitably in the meeting, somebody would be like, we should have another meeting. And then inevitably in the meeting, they'd be like, you know what? We should actually get approval from all these different people. And then inevitably somebody else in the meeting would be like, you know what? There's an election coming up. Maybe we should be pencils down. And so all this hierarchy was like all these like make work projects. And my belief is that because of AI, it's actually going to be able to help us accelerate a lot of that work. It's going to help us not only accelerate, but do a lot of that work. And the point of bureaucracy is to help manage the work. But when the work is being done by other people or another entity, like the AI, then what work are we actually managing? And to me, this is actually the beginning of a new type of institution, a new type of organization that's actually hyper efficient, that's AI driven, that looks at all the processes and saying, how do we make this just more of an elegant process using AI? And I think this is going to be the beginning of a new world. And I think, Elon, what he did with X was actually a catalyst for many other companies to say, actually, we should also look at our operations and think about how do we do way more with way less. And actually, you saw companies go off and say, I'm going to bring people back to the office. I'm going to help streamline what we're doing around our operations. And you saw a lot of tech companies cut staff, have layoffs, make their operations more lean and efficient. And I think Meta was one of the big benefactors of that. And you see how how they performed over the last year or so. So I think Elon was definitely a catalyst for that. And I think he might be a catalyst for what they do in government. Now, we'll see. I mean, you never know with these elections. They always talk a good game before, and who knows what happens after. And by the way, innovating in the private sector is very different than innovating in the public sector. So we'll see if any of this happens. But I believe that this is going to be a new beginning for institutions. And so the other thing I want to talk about is the idea of the end of consulting. Well, maybe it's the beginning of a new era of consulting. Last week was an interesting week for me. It was a really cool moment. Last Monday, I was in Toronto. And if you've been following this pod, you know that I spent 12 years at Deloitte. And last Monday, I was invited back to Deloitte to do a presentation to their executive leadership group, and to help them disrupt themselves. And it was a really cool moment, full circle moment for me, because for somebody that spent over a decade at that firm, working with a lot of those people, working a lot with those leaders to be brought back to help them disrupt themselves, was just a really cool moment. And one of the things that I talked about was the idea that we are entering into a new beginning when it comes to this idea of trust, right? Especially when it comes to firms. The idea that people follow people, not institutions, that people want to work with people. And a lot of these firms, like Deloitte, and I told them to their face, is that, I used to work with this partner. His name is Paul McMillan. Smart, like literally the smartest guy on the planet. Like, I was in awe of him. And I told him, like, this was back in like 2014. I said, man, like, we got to get you on a podcast. We got to get you to write like articles and books and go to events and do speaking events and like get a video. Like, we got to get more eyeballs on what you're saying. And he said, yeah, I get it. And he laughed. He said the partnership would never go for it because, the firm values the firm. And this is like many organizations. It's not about the individual. It's about the firm. And my belief is that that's an assembly line. That's an industrial age way of looking at things. That's the old model. The new model is, how do we turn our people into rock stars? And I don't care if you work for a consulting firm, a marketing firm, accounting firm, if you work in financial services and insurance, people follow people. People trust people at the end of the day. And my belief is that the new style of firm agency is actually promoting the people, and the people being the brand advocates for the work that they do and the value that they provide. I'm not saying that everyone has to be an influencer or creator, but the idea for everyone to share their ideas, to create their own IP, to create their own assets, to put it out in the world. It doesn't have to be even broadly. It can be through a text message. It could be through an event. It could be through one-on-one interactions. Like, just people being able to develop their own brand eminence is going to be so much more important, because trust in institutions, trust in government, trust in media is faltering. It's at an all-time low, and yet people are trusting people. That's the new thing, right? That was the thesis as why I wrote the book, The Bold Ones. It's literally in the first chapter. It's literally in the first chapter of the book. And so I think that there's going to be a new beginning for all these different firms because of this new way that we're trusting one another. So this is a new beginning. Listen, I'm losing my voice, but I just want to jump on here after the elections. It's a new beginning. I just want to spread optimism and hope. I'm just an optimist at heart. I know, like, there's lots of people in Canada and the United States and America that are angry or they're disappointed. I literally called one of my friends and I just wanted to check on her to see if she was okay, because she was getting stressed about, what was happening in the U.S., even though she lives in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. But I'm just hopeful, because I think there is a new beginning for many, many things. And I think the people that listen to this pod and get to the final portion of this, I hope that you guys are the builders. I hope you guys are the creators. I hope you guys are the people that will go off and actually change your trajectory and the trajectory of the companies that you work for, or the business that you run, or your lives. And this podcast was for the dangerous ones. So I really appreciate you rocking with me. Another episode of Dangerous Ideas, and we'll see you on the next one.